and you are safe. That's good news, y'all.
Yes, Lord.
Back to Ferguson. The Ferguson verdict of not guilty, regardless of your stance on that decision, has unearthed a bitter reality in our nation. Racial disparities still exist in our nation. There are supremacist systems that support some and subjugate others. And certain people can flat out care less, or they just don't care about the well-being of our urban youth, especially for some of these more poor communities. They don't care about the sustainability of our urban youth and the future of these young people. Regardless of what you feel about that verdict, there is enough research to prove, indeed, that racial and economic injustice still exists in this nation.
Yeah.
My personal quest towards being a person of racial reconciliation, as I talked to my brother Gerald about this week, it led me to look for a denomination that was at least having serious dialogue and conversation about systemic injustice. I wanted to join a fellowship that can unify believers and serve as a beacon light of hope that reconciliation is possible through faith in Jesus Christ. I need y'all to hear this. We can march all day, y'all. We can loot grocery stores all day. We can curse out the police. We can lay down, they just recently did this on Drexel Street, as if we're kind of mimicking dead black bodies. We can do all of that. However, today, I propose an alternative for the people of Christ. Listen here. My admittedly simplistic solution is to preach the gospel. Preach Christ and Him crucified. Just as your heart was touched and stirred today all over again, as you sat under the message of the gospel yet remains the most transformative agent of social change that exists.
Absolutely.
Paul says in Romans 1:16, y'all know it, that the message in itself has power to transform lives. Y'all hear me? The gospel can bring justice where corruption reigns, reconciliation where bias and bigotry are in operation. This message, when believed, evokes transformation towards God's standard of holiness and away from the sin nature that corrupts and destroys. When we don't believe that God detests sin, when we don't realize that sin begets death, we won't be serious about applying the effective solution that I'm speaking of today. Sin is a serious problem, and in fact, it is the central problem, and God has provided a solution. Your job is to share the gospel. I wish I would hear this. Your job is to share the gospel.
Yes.
It is God's job to stir the spirit. You cannot convert someone to the faith. All you can do is influence them through your acts, your actions, and also the words that you speak. I'm not saying don't march, don't protest. And in fact, y'all know your boy, man. I'll be in some of those marches with you. I will be in some of the rallies and some of the protests with you. But what I am saying today is that if we go to those marches, and we go to those protests and the rallies, and we don't take Christ with us very intentionally to say that this is the number one solution, those marches, those rallies, the protests will not be as effective as they possibly can be. But if we go out there, man, with a sense of conviction towards what God's standard of holiness is, and then we march and then we rally, saying, God, prayerfully, I am looking for an exposure